Episode number 17, Christina Poddubiuk.
It's gonna snow tonight.
And welcome back to The Title Block, the show about Canadian theatre designers, their history, and their craft. I'm your host, Michael Kruse, and this week I get to talk with set and costume designer Christina Poddubiuk. I went down to the Shaw Festival and had a bunch of conversations with people down there, including Sula Page and William Schmuck and other designers, and I'll be airing those over the next several months. But first, I just want to let you in. Tonight, I'm going to the Herald Awards, which is the Alternative Theatre Awards here in Toronto. It's a bit of a different. I want to give a little plug to them. It's a little bit of a different award ceremony where the winners from last year get together and, as a group, decide who each of the winners is going to herald in this year's awards. And it's set up in a series of houses based on the original awardees in this system. I was awarded or heralded back in 2009, maybe? It may have been later. I should have maybe looked that up. That would have been a good idea, eh? But I was heralded in the House of Bettis, named after Paul Bettis. And it's quite an honor. And I got to honor Catherine Westall, who is currently the managing director at a theater in Montreal. So I'm really happy to be going to that tonight. The band I play in, called the Uncle Red Foundation, will be playing there as well. So it's going to be really exciting. So I'll let you know how that goes in subsequent episodes. But you're going to be getting this probably well after the Herald Awards get through. But you can check them out at Facebook @ / the Herald Awards. And also on Twitter at Herald Awards. So check them out and get involved in the alternative theatre community here in Toronto. Yes, I was down at the Shaw Festival this year. I made arrangements to go down to the Shaw Festival to speak with a bunch of designers down there, and I had great help from the head of design, William Schmuck, and the head of lighting design, Kevin Lamotte. I still have yet to book a sound designer. I know it's a big missing, gaping hole from the catalog, but I really have to make a point of this. It's exciting. Part of the problem is, of course, as a lighting designer, I don't know much about sound design, so it was a bit daunting, but I'm sure in the future we'll have somebody on. Christina Poddubiuk is this week's interviewee. You can check out her website featuring work by her and her partner Scott McCowan in Stratford at punchandjudy.ca. There's some great portfolio shots there. I'll be including them some of them in the show notes, which you can find at thetitleblock.ca. Excuse me. No, that's thetitleblock.com. Yes, that's thetitleblock.com. Excuse me. You know, it's hard to remember things. Anyways, getting on to the interview. Today, we're going to be talking about Pygmalion, which is premiering at the Shaw Festival on June the 5th. This will be out before that. So there will be some spoilers. Not a lot of people are unaware of the story of Pygmalion. Obviously, it was based, it was the Bernard Shaw play that My Fair Lady was based on, but we're going to talk about the take by Peter Hinton, who is the director of Pygmalion down at the Shaw Festival, so you can get a leg up on seeing that show. Make sure to get down there and get your tickets. It's sure to be a popular piece. So again, check out the show notes at thetitleblock.com. They'll have links about the people we talk about in my conversation with Christina. And you know what? I'm just going to stop talking and we'll just get on with the show. Here is my conversation with set and costume designer Christina Poddubiuk. Christina Poddubiuk, welcome to the Title Block. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks.
I'm here at the Shaw Festival with set and costume designer Christina Poddubiuk. She's designing costumes for Pygmalion, which we'll talk about a bit later in the show. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was your early history and how you decided to go into theater in the first place. You were born in the UK, is that right? And
That's
moved
right.
To Montreal?
My parents came as immigrants in the mid-50s, and I grew up in Montreal Catholic school system. My parents were ambitious for me, but not necessarily encouraging in the arts. They were very keen that I should become a professional and exceed their own educational chances by getting a degree. I did a degree at McGill University, and then thoroughly disappointed them by deciding to go to the National Theatre School.
It's an interesting theme that happens. We've talked about that a lot on the title block. But still, how did you make that decision to switch? What did you go to McGill for? What was your original?
I did English literature, an honors degree at McGill. As really someone completely unsuited to follow a teaching career, because part of that program was to speak and to discuss in sort of forum seminar situations, and I was terrible at that. I knew I wasn't meant for a teaching or academic or career or situations where I had to defend a thesis. But I did become drawn to the amateur theater company at McGill, and I did have drawing skills and something of a knowledge of art history that had been encouraged at home, and those pieces sort of came together. And one of my fellow class members, Claire Hopkinson, advised me to apply to the National Theatre School, which I had no idea existed. During this 1967 expo in Montreal, there was quite a lot of visiting theatre companies, and I think that was really a life-changing thing for me. My parents took me to quite a few productions, RSC productions, which completely fascinated me. And after that, I started saving money and going to the Centaur, going to Sadie Brofman on my own. So I knew it was a keen interest, but it just, until Claire said, look at the design program at NTS, it just had never occurred to me that there might be a professional opportunity for me doing design.
And what was the process like to get into theater, the National Theatre School at that point? You had finished your degree in English Lit, right?
Yes.
What was the requirements, and how did you?
There was an assigned project, which I had really no idea how. I can't remember. It was a contemporary play to do a set design. I think just a rendering and some costume design. I had absolutely no idea how to approach that, but I guess as a child, illustration was always what I did. I read a lot, and I loved to illustrate stories that I read. So this didn't seem very different to me. It seemed like I was doing an illustration for a book. Yeah. So I guess on the strength of that, I had a meeting with François Barbeau, and he completely bowled me over, and it was like a big change in direction. I just felt this was the world I wanted to be part of, and I was within weeks. I had like changed my hair and left home, and I was just a new person.
It's a fantastic story. Once you got out of theater school, did you transition immediately? Oh, as I hit my microphone. Let me try that again. As you got out of theater school, did you transition immediately into work, or what was your first job, for example?
I did transition immediately to work because I was gripped with fear when I finished NTS that I because my parents were so against what I had done, I really needed to prove that I was not going to let them be right. So I got work right away as a sewer here at the Shaw Festival. Worked in the wardrobe, then moved to Toronto, worked for the Canadian Opera Company, and also went on tour with their ensemble as a wardrobe mistress. And following year became the dyer at the Stratford Festival and spent a year doing that and having close contact with the designers that I idolized at the Stratford Festival. So I did well initially, and I guess it was a fortunate time. I was able to find. I wasn't ladder climbing in any sense of the word. I was just really lucky.
And just give us a time frame of when this is occurring. So what did you
Early
graduate?
80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who was at the Stratford? Who hired you at Stratford? Do you remember?
I don't remember who the head. I can't remember the head of wardrobe at the Stratford. It was Carol Mulholland, I believe, who was head of wardrobe at the time, and Gail Tribick was and Polly Bodonetsky. I have to mention them both, both incredible craftspeople who have passed on the kinds of skills and knowledge that belong to another age in a way that I fear may never come back again. The ability to manipulate materials and to create beautiful things in a very demanding way that takes time and skill that may be disappearing from the big festivals.
We'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll talk about this machine down here. Now, what was your first design opportunity then? You were working in wardrobe and being a craftsperson when you left NTS. Who gave you your first opportunity or pushed you in that direction of actually doing your first professional design?
Well, Susan Benson, John Hirsch was the artistic director at the time, and she must have gone to him and encouraged him to have me do, I think it was the first season of the Young Company at the Tom Patterson, or the Third Stage, I think it was called at the time. And it was All's Well That Ends Well. Fiona Reed, who I greeted yesterday. And it was directed by Richard Cottrell, a very fearsome British director.
How was that? I mean, you're kind of, it must have been intimidating the first time.
The whole beginning of my career was, I always look at it and think it was all entirely intimidating. Every director I worked with for the first 5 or 6 or 7 years were extremely intimidating. It's quite interesting how that has changed. I worked with Derek Goldby and Richard Cottrell and William Gaskell and Robin Phillips, people like that who were completely terrifying. And I am actually easily intimidated, but somehow I did survive all that.
That's encouraging. That's encouraging. And so you started right away. It's incredible that, most people come out of theater school and they start working in small theater.
Right.
Not making very much money at all. Not that people, become wealthy working at that Shaw Festival, but you're working for small piece work, and to hear somebody coming out of that program and working right away at Stratford seems a bit unusual. Did you miss working on the small independent productions? How do you feel about
I
your
think
trajectory?
I made up for that interestingly later because, after a period of, I guess, about 10 or 12 years at Stratford where I did a show every year, I don't know, sometimes I wonder if I became more and more spoiled as time went on. And eventually, the year came where there wasn't something for me, for whatever reason. And I did find other opportunities, and I think I learned and enjoyed working with other kinds of management, other kinds of budgets, other situations. It took a while. It took a while to sort of learn how to shop at Value Village, but I did adjust, and I actually learned to really enjoy it.
Was there an assistant program at Stratford? Did you ever do any of that work prior to?
I did. That was sort of the step between the dye room and my first show was assisting Susan Benson on the Gondoliers. which was her one of a series of really successful GNS musicals.
And how did you find that experience? Did you, most people when they come out of theater school are not really ready to be designers necessarily just because of the experience. What did you take from that experience as an assistant?
Stratford is very much its own world. Maybe this is not the answer to your question, but I think the assistant program that I've seen happen in the U.S. is something. Perhaps it can't happen in Canada, but a real solid 5-year apprenticeship with a big designer, I often think is I've seen that with sort of friends who have graduated in the U.S. and gone on to work with, a Broadway designer. If I had it to do over again, I think I would love that. Because so much of what you learn under an established designer is the painful process you go through as in the smaller theaters where you're trying to figure out how to get things done on a small budget and a small time period. I don't know if we have the scale in this country for that kind of program to happen. At Stratford, the assistant process is not really that. I think it's a very formal arrangement, and it has a lot to do with really just management and record keeping, as opposed to real training, I think.
Mm-hmm. And once you left. Once you've finished at Stratford, let's talk about I want to fill in the gaps between, having made it, as they say. Were there any kind of specific important shows that you did early on that you think made your career, or sort of put you on the map, or that you took, that you did and then realized that this is what you're meant to do?
I think there was my second Much Ado at Stratford on the main stage was a production that I was very proud of, and it was really admired because I think by then I had learned that what I liked to achieve was a simple design that changes the space in a simple way, effectively, that solves Shakespeare, which needs a different mood and different physical space for every scene. I somehow accomplished something a simple machine that worked well, and that was pretty to look at. That was, I guess, the first time I did that, and I think in my work after that, that's usually what I strive for. I'm not very good at multi-set plays, and I'm not very good at highly technical, demanding sets. But what I do enjoy is a simple concept that kind of answers the needs of the play. Mm-hmm. That's what I like to do.
Just in your defense, I think the first show I did here at Shaw was with, I was assisting Rob Thompson, and it was on The Chocolate Soldier, which is a...
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was a while ago. But it was, I think you designed it. You were the set designer and costume designer. And for those in the audience who don't know, it's a musical or operetta version of Arms and the Man by Shaw, right? And that's a multi-unit set. Mm-hmm. It had some beautiful two-story. There was a two-story tower that was up center.
It still lives in this town on somebody's estate.
Right? I know somebody bought it right after the show closed. But I mean that's a big monument to the not only to your design but to the craftspeople who built it too. But it was consistent and elegant and detail oriented, and it fit together like everything was in the same world. Everything belonged on stage, basically. And so, and it was beautiful. So, I mean, I appreciate your point of view about what you're trying to strive, but that multi-unit set was it was beautiful. It was gorgeous.
It was also the Royal George, which I find less scary. I mean, a theater that size, I feel I can sort of encompass. But when I did, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't admit this on a podcast at the Shaw Festival. I did a Major Barbara with Joe Ziegler, and that show was very deeply meaningful to me, not only because I really love working with Joe, but I do really, really, really love the play. And I did struggle with the size of that, with how to use all that space. And it mostly worked, but there were parts of it that I didn't feel I pulled in to the solution that I would like to have done.
Mm-hmm. That is a bit daunting here. I mean, the Royal George, for people who haven't been there, it's about what's it, about 600-seat theater, I think.
If that.
Yeah, it's not very big.
I don't think it's that.
No. Yeah, you're probably right. Probably 400 or 500. Yeah, with a balcony. But the main stage is quite large, and I imagine the Major Barbara was on the main stage here. Did you? The first show you did was at Tom Patterson down at Stratford. The Avon, is it as big as the main stage here at Shaw?
I think it's close.
Yeah,
I think it's close.
Scale.
Yeah.
What about? How do you approach that? I mean, Major Barbara it's a play. There's some large groups on stage, but it's not a 40-person musical. How do you reconcile that with doing what is essentially spoken word on a large stage like that? How do you match the scale of the set to the scale of the drama? What's your approach when you're doing sort of large scale things? Like that on stage? Is that an odd question?
Well, Shaw is really big, and the ideas in Major Barbara are pretty monumental. So, I think Shaw deserves big ideas. I think it was more the three act nature of it, and how to unify. That's it. I'm uncomfortable with settings that aren't all of a piece, like going from a house to a working to a industrial setting to a garden setting. That always daunts me, I think, because I don't necessarily see a way to make it all of a piece.
Right. I understand. Okay. Now, what brought you originally to? You said you worked here originally when you left NTS, but then most of your early work was at Stratford. How did you find your way back to the Shaw Festival?
I think just periodically. There were years when I traded back and forth or worked at both places. Marty Meriden did a Getting Married at the courthouse, which I think was one of the early productions I did back here at the Shaw Festival, in the midst of also working at Stratford. And then over time, sort of the work kind of dwindled at Stratford and became very consistent here, which was wonderful.
I can imagine. And just before we talk about Pygmalion, somebody mentioned when I said that I was going to be interviewing today, they mentioned that they were really quite impressed with the way that you can move between the large, machines like the Shaw to a small independent company with a lot of grace. Like you're able to adapt your style to a small, intimate, and frankly lower budget environment. How do you personally find that kind of transfer? Is it easy? Is it just a matter of thinking about keeping the budget in mind, or how do you prepare yourself? What's the difference in preparation between approaching the Shaw play to approaching a small independent production?
I find what actually always makes me really nervous is when a director asks me to do something we can't afford to do in a fake way, or by relying on borrowing fancy costumes from a bigger theater. Or I'm really happy to work. I'm most comfortable working within the limitations of what the theater has. I kind of feel that if a theater is in a certain place and they have X amount of resources, then the production should suit that. What really scares me is when a small theater with no budget wants to rent all the costumes from Stratford, and I'm stuck with a mishmash of things that don't really fit and aren't really in keeping with the nature of that company. I would much rather find, as much as possible, a solution to a play that suits where the company stands in terms of their production values. It seems dishonest not to do that to me. Which is not to say you can't. I think that sometimes leads to great solutions. It doesn't have to be a compromise, and it doesn't mean you have to be lazy either. You do as much as you can, and I've seen. I'm not even talking about myself. There are people in Toronto that are creating incredible costumes and sets with very little. So it doesn't have to be, an obstacle at all. I just don't. I hate the idea of borrowing $5,000 costumes to and pretending that they're part of your creative effort. I don't like doing that.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to stray just a little bit into your process, but when you're actually, especially in the area of costumes, I think, because in the area of set design, the set's going to be built most of the time. Mm-hmm. You may find furniture pieces and props and things, but the physical set itself is going to be some sort of construction. Whereas with costumes, down here you have the opportunity, maybe not to build the whole show, but you certainly can build key pieces. And you have like a tailor on staff who can make custom, tuxedos for people and things like that. So how do you approach? How does your process change when you're looking at a build of 40 costumes versus pulling for 3 characters at Value Village? Like, how do you does your actual conceptual process change?
Oh, sure, for sure. Usually your director is already conscious of what the possibilities are. For Pygmalion, Peter knows what can happen here, and of course he was wildly ambitious about what we could achieve, and you kind of like sculpt that until it works for the budget. Other places, like I've recently done a couple of shows at the Belfry, which I've really enjoyed and I've actually been really proud of. And knowing that there's absolutely no money to do anything, but those shows were possible in that framework. So
that's terrific. So let's go right to Pygmalion. First of all, give us for people who aren't familiar with the play. I'm not quite sure those people exist, but if they do, I want to make sure people know what we're talking about. Give us just a quick synopsis of. It's by Bernard Shaw, right?
Yes.
What's the quick synopsis of the story and the context for the play itself?
Of course, Pygmalion is the play that My Fair Lady is based on, and of course everybody knows that. Pygmalion, there are quite a few versions, some of which include rather filmic scenes which were used in the film, but the play version we're doing does not include the embassy ball, and it doesn't include any Cockney dancing in the streets. And so it really just is a 5-act story of a familiar story of a flower girl being discovered in Covent Garden by a phoneticist who takes her on a bet, really, that he has the skills to pass her off as a duchess in 6 months. So the play is it's the Pygmalion and Galatea classical story of sculpting this perfect woman that he falls in love with. Except Higgins doesn't really happen, but he pulls it off. He and his friend Colonel Pickering take Eliza through language lessons and takes her very unspeakable Cockney accent and passes her off at a ball. And she turns on him because he gives her no credit for the accomplishment.
Right.
So it really is, in some ways, like many of his plays, a very feminist story.
Mm-hmm. And how did you start to explore the characters' journeys with the costumes? Sounds like Eliza's trajectory sort of demands that her costumes change and reflect her own emotional state. How did you begin? How did you find your way into the script, first of all?
Well, right away, Peter, within like 4 minutes of picking up the phone, he told me he was doing the play Modern, which kind of initially disappointed me because I love doing period clothes, and people love doing period clothes with me because craftspeople are nuts for detail. That's why they're there. They enjoy sewing on 57 buttons and doing perfect little French seams. That's what people love to do. And I love to do it too. So I was momentarily disappointed, but then I right away realized that we've had 5 beautiful period productions of Pygmalion here at the Shaw Festival, and I probably couldn't outdo any of them. I would do my version of the very same thing. And Peter sold me on the idea right away, and in fact, we both share an interest in the writer Zadie Smith, and that was really part of the formation of the concept for this production. So the development of the characters came awfully naturally, I have to say. It just... There's been almost nothing to prevent us from conceiving of the characters in Pygmalion as modern-day people, and it's quite amazing.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. And now describe some more about the type of research that you would have done. A modern piece necessarily wouldn't have all the period research that you would have to rely on.
It's been more research.
Oh, really? In what way?
It really has. Well, this is like a truism around the theater, but I think people who aren't in the theater don't realize how much harder it is to dress people in contemporary clothes than in period clothes. Period clothes, generally, I'm the expert. As long as I pick the right silhouette and the right fabric and the right color, people believe me that is what that character would have worn. I have enough knowledge. I've looked at photographs and enough paintings. I understand the difference between, England in 1880 and France in 1880 and America in 1880. I can get those things right, or what I think is right, just based on my store of knowledge. And an actor will come into a fitting room and believe me. I've read Henry James. I've read Edith Wharton. I know what butlers wear. I know, when you wear gloves and when you don't wear gloves. All of those things are technical knowledge that you pick up and you rely on. The difference with contemporary clothes is I am no expert on that. And nobody's really, Charlotte Dean's a pretty good expert on it, and Dana Osborne, they're pretty good experts on it. But really what happens is you realize that every choice you make is so full of information that, honestly, if I put the wrong shoe with the wrong jean, it's glaringly obvious right away. So in order to do this play, which in some aspects is really sort of high-end fashion, I really did invest in dozens and dozens of very expensive British fashion magazines, and tried to distill what's going on in the fashion world. But truly, what I bought in September is already done. So, if I bought those magazines again in the spring issues, it would be all over. It's much harder to get this right, I have to say. Mm-hmm. Plus, and on top of that, added to that, I really can't afford Stella McCartney. So, I can afford Aldo shoes, but I really can't afford, I can't even afford Fluvogs. So we're trying to get that expressiveness of the meaning. It's funny, we think our modern clothes are so boring, but in fact, our modern clothes are so full of meaning. It's incredible. It really is incredible when you think about it.
Mm-hmm. And how does that reflect in the characters in the show? Like describe the arc of Higgins, for example, and Eliza, and how they contrast.
Peter had this very fascinating idea that Higgins sort of lives on the fringes of socially acceptable society, and that he cares little for his dress, but his mother sort of lives in the high fashion world. So he has pieces that he's picked up from a rack at his mother's house. He's a bit anachronistic, and in his clothing is a bit of a muddle. Eliza, and I think this is really specific in the play, Shaw has taken her through a journey and purposely presented her in every scene in a different guise from, the squashed cabbage leaf of Act One. Very specific instructions that she's made herself clean and decorated herself with, feathers in her hat for Act Two. Huge transformation in Act Three, where she, which is the big comic scene, where she has become Higgins and Pickering's puppet. And then Act Four, where she is the belle of the ball. This is the gown that Peter told me to spend the earth on. and then finally in Act 5, finding her own footing.
Mm-hmm. And did you is most of the show bought? It's all modern, but did you build?
What we're making, and you'll see the logic of it, is we're making the things that we couldn't afford to buy. So anything that would have had a whole Renfrew price tag, mm-hmm. we're making, because we have labor here. So, in fact, a handmade costume here at the Shaw Festival really is worth the same as a Chanel jacket, mm-hmm. because it's being made by hand. So it really does have the same value. So I can recreate a Chanel jacket, and it will be every bit as lovely as what you would get on Bloor Street. But I only have a certain amount of labor, so about, I would say, more than half of the show is coming from the mall.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine. I can accept that. Now, when you are developing your ideas, obviously you do renderings. How do you get to a point where once you've done renderings, that's what everything is, or do you do multiple steps? Like, how do you get to your final design?
Well,
process?
I actually love drawing. So I can sometimes be a little bit too precious about it. I do a lot of erasing and changing before I show it to my director, and I make a lot of changes through that process. Finally, I have to add color to it. I'm not at all interested in working digitally. Mm-hmm. So once I add color to it, I can't really change it. and perhaps I'm not as flexible as some. I've known other designers to do their final sketch and then be willing to do another one and another one and another one if it's not working. I'm a little, perhaps not lazy, but I do get kind of stuck on the final product, and then any adjustments I have to make after that, I make through my fabric purchase or my shopping. But I will say that I think every designer does this. A lot of it is kind of strategy. The things that you think might be a problem or might not go over well, or if you're unsure about your choice, you kind of hold your cards tight to your chest and you hold back on those decisions. You see how things are going. You wait till the last possible moment before, you buy that, peacock blue because you're not sure if the actor's going to like it. So it's a lot of it is strategy.
Mm-hmm. And how do you deal with the actor's input into their own costume? How do you approach that? Do you give them a lot of leeway, or is it just a negotiation?
It's a negotiation, and I have to say I kind of mostly have found that a really good thing. I honestly, I don't really, I certainly have a vision of what I want a show to look like, and I have my own, particular taste and idea of what I want to put out there. But in the end, I really don't believe in putting an actor on stage in something that they don't believe in. If they don't buy it, then it doesn't work. Then my work's no good. So I don't want that to happen. Now, generally, I will say actors are very generous. They a lot of them, in a very professional way, accept that the jeans are not really the ones they would have bought themselves, but they say no, they're fine. But conceptually, I enjoy a little bit of give and take, and if I can adjust what I've done to make it work better for the actor, that I'm thrilled by that, actually, because otherwise I needn't even be here. I could just send my designs and have somebody buy them and cut them out and put them on stage. I really do enjoy being part of the process, and where I can make changes that work better for them, I feel that makes my work legitimate. Mm-hmm.
And how about working with the craftspeople in wardrobe and wigs and everything like that? How do you communicate your ideas to them? How do you help them to interpret the rendering that you do in order to get a product that you're all happy with? Especially with something like hair, which is such a three-dimensional thing. It's really difficult to render, I think, something in a two-dimensional way.
Well, I think my drawings are fairly clear. So I do draw pretty clearly, so I have good communication about that. Hair is, it's always problematic. And I think in most theaters, we're shifting more and more towards hairdressing rather than wigs, just because they're so phenomenally expensive to make and to maintain. And I think there's a naturalism that most directors and designers are looking for that makes wigging really tricky. I do find hats the hardest. I don't know what it is. There's a wonderful hat maker, milliner here at Shaw, who seems to understand what I'm trying to get at, but I think that's my weakest area is trying to come up with hat shapes.
And now you had spoken earlier, I think in our sort of pre-interview time, about the difficulties with maintaining a certain level of craftsmanship, and that we're losing a lot of important and really irreplaceable skills. Yeah. Can you describe maybe why you think that's happening and what we can do about it, or what the solution is, maybe?
There are a lot of new skills being developed along with new materials and creative ways to make things that didn't exist before. So I guess what I meant has to do more with classical theater. I don't know if I've already mentioned Gail Tribick and Polly Bodinetsky, who have both retired now from the Stratford Festival, but these are people who can recreate jewelry and ornaments and in a theatrical way that I haven't really seen in younger craftspeople who rely more heavily on manufactured what's out there that's manufactured shapes and gems and metal bits. We tend to just sort of use resources in a less I guess it's the old glue gun and wire tricks are kind of being lost. Gail, wire collars, I that seems silly, but being able to, if you're going to be doing anything in the 17th century, the ability to wire a collar on an Elizabethan costume is a really, really tricky skill, or to make a crown that looks real. Those are time-consuming tasks. I guess they've become expensive. But once that tradition is lost, it'll all move into like what's available at the dollar store, I'm afraid.
It's a bit disappointing. Now, okay, so you've gotten to the point where we are, you're building the costumes. Now, at this point, Pygmalion is a late opener right here. Or is it
June.
June, okay. Yeah. So you're probably in the thick of it right now.
Yeah.
What, in between sort of the first, when you've got the shape of the costume, and let's say you've done a first fitting, how much changes between that point and the final edit? Is it, I imagine there's not much, but is it, what goes on during that period of time for you as a designer? What kind of, what are you looking for in rehearsal and in the final performance?
Accessories. I'm watching rehearsal as much as possible, and sort of generalized sketches of, say, the Londoners in the first scene. There was perhaps not a lot of information back in December, January, when I was working on this about who these people were. The actors are making that more particular now in rehearsal, and so where I can, I'm either making slight changes or adding things or just refining ideas so that they more closely match what the actors are actually doing. As far as the built costumes go, we stick with the plan. We pretty much have to stick with the plan.
Right, you can't go back and rebuild something, right?
No.
Now, how about approaching costume design when you're not designing the set? How do you, as a lighting designer, I can see, there are set and lighting designers who design the whole thing themselves, but it seems easier to me to separate the two because there's such different
Right.
Fields of work. As a costume and set designer, how do you integrate your costumes into a set design? How do you ensure that they both inhabit the same world when you don't have control over both elements?
I've been doing more and more of both at the same time. In this case, E.O. Sharp, I haven't worked with her before, but I've seen her work. And the hard edges and the simplicity of the set, I think, are very, very good for a lot of texture and detail in the clothing. So I think this will work. I mean, and I understand Peter's style, and I think E.O.'s work is big and monumental, hard-edged, and very clean. So I have also kind of kept most of my stuff not fussy prints but quite bold and graphic So I think I understand what she's going for and how to make the clothes kind of look punchy with the hard black and white of what she's done.
And I imagine that you are, when you were first conceptualizing, you had to sort of wait to find out what the major elements of the set were going to be before you started to really bite into what you were responsible for, or did it develop at the same time? Were there any surprises as you went through the process?
No, I mean, unfortunately, we didn't. We had one early meeting together, and I understood that the set was going to be abstract enough that that what I added to it would be the color and the life of the picture. So,
and I imagine it's Peter's job as the director to make sure that everyone's on the same page,
which he does really well.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, he really does corral everything through his own vision, I think, and yeah.
Great. So we have about 10 minutes left. Let's talk about training. You went through the National Theatre School model, which I don't think has changed that much in the last 30 years. I mean, it's probably evolved, but it's a very practical model. And apprenticeships still exist, but as you mentioned earlier, that kind of long, really in-depth, intensive design apprenticeship is kind of missing. That kind of model is missing in our country. What do you think are the benefits of our model here in Canada? What do you think is missing? Not just that apprenticeship program, but what do you see from new graduates that you think is great? And what do you see that's missing from their training, and how can we improve it? There's about 8 questions in there, but you can sort of start with your general impression of how people are trained.
Well, I can think about 2 young people that I've met recently. I would say, the younger graduates today are, as in every field, incredibly astute and quick, and so I don't see any lack that way in their resourcefulness at all. The young lady that was, as a student, an assistant to me recently, I think she was greatly benefited by having understood how important the text is. And myself, coming from a English lit background, I'm also like that. I spend a long time on the text, and with a director like Peter, you're going to be mining every word, every bit of information, every aspect of the play that gives you a clue to some other aspect. So I would say that's a really important skill. I don't know how much that's emphasized, but I think it's really important. A command of language and a real understanding of text, I think that's pretty huge. Art history, I think that's really huge. Technical training I can't really speak to because I'm very weak in that area myself, and I'm very behind in those skills.
Now, just before we go on, you said that I don't think I've ever seen, at least in the theater, any kind of computer-rendered costume designs. Is that the trend? Is that what we're going towards, or is it still
Ken MacDonald can do that, and he does it really beautifully, actually.
Is it all rendered like an illustrator, like are you drawing on the computer?
Yeah.
And then you're illustrating?
He does that, yeah.
Wow.
And he does it really well. Like he can do renderings that are as beautiful as a hand-drawn drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And do you think that it's... well, if they're as beautiful, then they're appropriate.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
If they're communicating all the elements, then that's what the point is, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's terrific. Now, how about theater artists as artists in their own right? I I feel like designers. Well, there are designers who are artists. Not all designers are artists, and not all artists are designers. It's kind of a meld. What do you think is more important? Is being an auteur a helpful skill as a designer, or do you think it gets in the way? Or
So what do you mean by being an auteur?
well, somebody who has a very singular vision,
Right.
Like a fine artist will have a
Yep.
will have a stream, like a long history of this is what I do. I do paintings in this media, and I do these are my subjects and
Yeah.
my compositional elements.
Yes.
Whereas in design, you have to be kind of a chameleon, right?
Right. I think that's really an interesting question. I guess the designers that or the kind of design that I really admire comes from that kind of person. I don't think of myself as an artist, and I think somebody like Michael Levine is, a designer I really look up to as, I guess what you mean, as an auteur. Yeah, we are chameleons. I mean, we all have our palette that we work within. I think it is important to have that too. I remember at the National Theatre School, Francois Barbeau saying to us as a class that one of the most important things we learn when we're training is to know yourself. And I had no idea actually what he meant at the time. And it took me about 15 or 20 years to actually understand how important that was. To have some kind of consistent way of approaching your work and to do it in a way that is meaningful to you, to be true to that.
And what's changed? Like, how do you work now that you never would have worked as when you first began?
I think I hope I'm more actually, I feel like I was a bit of a brat at Stratford. As I said, I think I got spoiled really early, and I think a lot of experiences made me a lot more humble about my work, and I mean, I think it's made me a lot more humble and more willing to work with the strengths and weaknesses of what I've got around me, including my own.
Mm-hmm. That's terrific. And the last question, just when we wrap up here, what would you? I've had mixed. When I asked this question to other designers, there's been the follow your passion answer, and the what are you thinking answer when people are considering a career in theater. What do you think is the most important thing to remember for somebody who is either contemplating a career in theater, coming out of high school, trying to choose a program or choose a lifestyle, and for the individuals who are in university right now training in theater? What do you think is the most important thing they should focus on when trying to make that decision? And should they go into theater as well? Is it a good choice?
I think it's different now because people seem much better at transitioning, at starting with one thing and moving on through different phases and different experiences. And I think that's great. I don't think anybody who thinks they want to do theater should be advised not to do it. I mean, obviously, you need to know that it's going to be a bit rough and that you're going to have to be pretty resourceful to make it through those first few years. And you better have been through a few connections with directors that feel good to you. If you've had 2 or 3 or 4 experiences where you feel you're getting something out of it, and you're if that feels healthy and solid, then I think it's worth going on. But I do think what's different now is that that can all evolve over time into other kinds of work and experiences.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being on the Title Block. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We could be in the sky. I'll see you at last.
And that was designer Christina Poddubiuk speaking to me from the design studio at the Shaw Festival in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Next time, more from the Shaw Festival when I interview set designer Sue LePage. The music for this podcast is PodSafe music from the 1990s called See You by the Lights. You can find them at roughtraderecords.com/the1990s. Please go to iTunes and give us a review. It'll help get the word out about this podcast and share the history of theatre design in Canada. And you can follow us on Twitter at the Titleblock CA and on Facebook.com/the Titleblock Podcast. You can send comments and requests by email to thetitleblock@gmail.com. Feel free to share this with your friends, colleagues, students, and teachers, or listen to it while you resist the urge to dance naked in the fountain in downtown Niagara-on-the-Lake, and they assure me this really happened, quote, back in the day, unquote. I'm Michael Kruse, and I'll see you next time on The Title Block.